Reflections from the Complete Works of Swami Vivekananda, Part 23, The Mission of the Vedanta. Section 2. I have become used to hear all sorts of wonderful claims put forward in favor of every religion under the sun. You have also heard quite within recent times the claims put forward by Dr. Burrows, a great friend of mine, that Christianity is the only universal religion. Let me consider this question a while and lay before you my reasons why I think that it is Vedanta and Vedanta alone that can become the universal religion of man, and that no other is fitted for the role. Excepting our own, almost all the other great religions in the world are inevitably connected with the life or lives of one or more of their founders. All their theories, their teachings, their doctrines, and their ethics are built around the life of a personal founder, from whom they get their sanction, their authority, and their power. And strangely enough, upon the historicity of the founder's life is built, as it were, all the fabric of such religions. If there is one blow dealt to the historicity of that life, as has been the case in modern times, with the lives of almost all the so called founders of religion, we know that half of the details of such lives is not now seriously believed in, and that the other half is seriously doubted. If this becomes the case, if that rock of historicity, as they pretend to call it, is shaken and shattered, the whole building tumbles down, broken absolutely, never to regain its lost status. Every one of the great religions in the world, excepting our own, is built upon such historical characters, but ours rest upon principles. There is no man or woman who can claim to have created the Vedas. They are the embodiment of eternal principles. Sages discovered them, and now and then the names of these sages are mentioned. Just their names, we do not even know who or what they were. In many cases, we do not know who their fathers were, and almost in every case, we do not know when and where they were born. But what cared they, these sages, for their names? They were the preachers of principles, and they themselves, so far as they went, tried to become illustrations of the principles they preached. At the same time, just as our God is an impersonal and yet a personal God, so is our religion a most intensely impersonal one. A religion based upon principles, and yet with an infinite scope for the play of persons. For what religion gives you more incarnations, more prophets and seers, and still waits for infinitely more? The Bhagavata says that the incarnations are infinite, leaving ample scope for as many as you like to come. Therefore, if any or more of these persons in India's religious history, any one or more of these incarnations, and any one or more of our prophets are proved not to have been historical, it does not injure our religion at all. Even then, it remains firm as ever because it is based upon principles and not upon persons. It is in vain we try to gather all the peoples of the world around a single personality. It is difficult to make them gather together even round eternal and universal principles. If it ever becomes possible to bring the largest portion of humanity to one way of thinking in regard to religion, mark you, it must be always through principles and not through persons. Yet, as I have said, our religion has ample scope for the authority and influence of persons. There is that most wonderful theory of Ishta, which gives you the fullest and the freest choice possible among these great religious personalities. You may take up any one of the prophets or teachers as your guide and the object of your special adoration. You are even allowed to think that he whom you have chosen is the greatest of the prophets, greatest of all the avatars. There is no harm in that, but you must keep to a firm background of eternally two principles. The strange fact here is that the power of our incarnations has been holding good with us only so far as they are illustrations of the principles in the Vedas. The glory of Sri Krishna is that he has been the best preacher of our eternal religion of principles and the best commentator on the Vedanta that ever lived in India. The second claim of the Vedanta upon the attention of the world is that of all the scriptures in the world, it is the one scripture that teaching of which is in entire harmony with the results that have been attained by the modern scientific investigations of external nature. Two minds in the dim past of history, cognate to each other in form and kinship and sympathy, started being placed in different routes. The one was the ancient Hindu mind and the other the ancient Greek mind. The former started by analyzing the internal world. The latter started in search of that goal beyond by analyzing the external world. And even through the various vicissitudes of their histories, it is easy to make out that these two vibrations of thought as tending to produce similar echoes of the goal beyond. It seems clear that the conclusions of modern materialistic science can be acceptable harmoniously with their religion only to the Vedantins or Hindus as they are called. It seems clear that modern materialism can hold its own and at the same time approach spirituality by taking up the conclusions of the Vedanta. It seems to us and to all who care to know that the conclusions of modern science or the very conclusions the Vedanta reached ages ago. Only in modern science they are written in the language of matter. This then is another claim of the Vedanta upon modern Western minds, its rationality, the wonderful rationalism of the Vedanta. I have myself been told by some of the best Western scientific minds of the day how wonderfully rational the conclusions of the Vedanta are. I know one of them personally who scarcely has time to eat his meal or go out of his laboratory, but who yet would stand by the hour to attend my lectures on the Vedanta, for he expresses it as they are so scientific. They so exactly harmonize with the aspirations of the age and with the conclusions to which modern science is coming at the present time. Two such scientific conclusions drawn from comparative religion I would specially like to draw your attention to. The one bears upon the idea of the universality of religions and the other on the idea of the oneness of things. We observe in the histories of Babylon and among the Jews an interesting religious phenomenon happening. We find that each of these Babylonian and Jewish peoples was divided into so many tribes, each tribe having a god of its own, and that these little tribal gods had often a generic name. The gods among the Babylonians were all called Baals, and among them Baal Medroch was a chief. In course of time, one of these many tribes would conquer and assimilate the other racially allied tribes, and the natural result would be that the god of the conquering tribe would be placed at the head of all the gods of the other tribes. Thus, the so-called boasted monotheism of the Semites was created. Among the Jews, the gods went by the name of Molochs. Of these, there was one Moloch who belonged to the tribe called Israel, and he was called the Moloch Yahweh or Moloch Yahweh. In time, this tribe of Israel slowly conquered some of the other tribes of the same race, destroyed their Molochs, and declared its own Moloch to be the supreme Moloch of all the Molochs. And I am sure most of you know the amount of bloodshed, of tyranny, and of brutal savagery that this religious conquest entailed. Later on, the Babylonians tried to destroy this supremacy of Moloch Yahweh but could not succeed in doing so. It seems to me that such an attempt at tribal self-assertion in religious matters might have taken place on the frontiers and India also. Here too, all the various tribes of the Aryans might have come into conflict one another for declaring the supremacy of their several tribal gods. But India's history was to be otherwise, was to be different from that of the Jews. India alone was to be, of all lands, the land of toleration and of spirituality, and therefore the fight between tribes and their gods did not long take place here. For one of the greatest sages that was ever born found out here in India, even at that distant time, which history cannot reach, and into whose gloom even tradition itself dares not peep, in that distant time the sage arose and declared, Ekam Sadvipra Bahuda Vadanti. He who exists is one. The sages call him variously. This is one of the most memorable sentences that was ever uttered, one of the grandest truths that was ever discovered. And for us Hindus, this truth has been the very backbone of our national existence. For throughout the vistas of the centuries of our national life, this one idea, Ekam Sadvipra Bahuda Vadanti, comes down, gaining in volume and in fullness till it has permeated the whole of our national existence, till it has mingled in our blood and has become one with us. We live that grand truth in every vein, and our country has become the glorious land of religious toleration. It is here and here alone that they build temples and churches for the religions which have come with the object of condemning our own religion. This is one very great principle that the world is waiting to learn from us. You little know how much of intolerance is yet abroad. It struck me more than once that I should have to leave my bones on foreign shores owing to the prevalence of religious intolerance. Killing a man is nothing for religion's sake. Tomorrow they may do it in the very heart of the boasted civilization of the West, if today they are not really doing so. Outcasting in its most horrible forms would often come down upon the head of a man in the West if he dared to say a word against his country's accepted religion. They talk glibly and smoothly here in criticism of our caste laws. If you go to the West and live there as I have done, you will know that even some of the biggest professors you hear of aren't cowards and dare not say, for fear of public opinion, 100th part of what they hold to be really true in religious matters. Therefore, the world is waiting for this grand idea of universal toleration. It will be a great acquisition to civilization. Nay, no civilization can long exist unless this idea enters into it. No civilization can grow unless fanaticism, bloodshed, and brutality stop. No civilization can begin to lift up its head until we look charitably upon one another, and the first step towards that much needed charity is to look charitably and kindly upon the religious convictions of others. Nay, more, to understand that not only should we be charitable but positively helpful to each other, however different our religious ideas and convictions may be. And that is exactly what we do in India, as I have just related to you. It is here in India that Hindus have built and are still building churches for Christians and mosques for Mohammedans. That is the thing to do. In spite of their hatred, in spite of their brutality, in spite of their cruelty, in spite of their tyranny, and in spite of the vile language they are given to uttering, we will and must go on building churches for the Christians and mosques for the Mohammedans until we conquer through love, until we have demonstrated to the world that love alone is the fittest thing to survive, and not hatred, that it is gentleness that has the strength to live on and to fructify, and not mere brutality and physical force. The other great idea that the world wants from us today, the thinking part of Europe, nay, the whole world, more perhaps, the lower classes than the higher, more the masses than the cultured, more the ignorant than the educated, more the weak than the strong, is that eternal grand idea of the spiritual oneness of the whole universe. I need not tell you today, men from Madras University, how the modern researchers of the West have demonstrated through physical means the oneness and the solidarity of the whole universe. How, physically speaking, you and I, the sun, moon, and stars, are but little waves or wavelets in the midst of an infinite ocean of matter. How Indian psychology demonstrated ages ago that similarly both body and mind are but mere names or little wavelets in the ocean of matter, the samasti, and how, going one step further, it is all shown in the Vedanta that being behind that idea of the unity of the whole show, the real soul, is one. There is but one soul throughout the universe, all is but one existence. This great idea of the real and basic solidarity of the whole universe has frightened many, even in this country. It even now finds sometimes more opponents than adherents. I tell you, nevertheless, that it is the one great life giving idea which the world wants from us today, and which the mute masses of India want for their uplifting, for none can regenerate this land of ours without the practical application and effective operation of this ideal of the oneness of things.